You're listening to the Business Communicators. And now your hosts, Austin Stepp and Thomas Baines.
Welcome into another episode of the Business Communicators, the number one podcast in the world for marketing and communications professionals. And Thomas, it's a verifiable fact. And this week we had some good news. We were not pitching PR news, but we were mentioned in PR news by Daniel Mendez, who gave us some nice words. He said that he listens to the Business Communicators and his Power of Free Education, saying they, quote, keep me engaged during commutes while delivering timely industry discussion. So that's the, best feedback that we've gotten in a publication. So I don't know, send us other thoughts if you want. Hit us up on social at Biz Communicator. But Thomas, what do you think of that?
I thought it was great, and it did add to my to-do list, because when you said, hey, I got some interesting news, I was not expecting the Business Communicator to be in PR news. So what that told me is my Google alerts, which all professionals should have theirs up to date, at least for their company and their personal brand. And mine was not. So I thought that was interesting. And that's what my post on LinkedIn was. Hey, to-do list.
Yeah.
Google alerts.
I think that's really important. Something when I graduated from Baylor in 2010, I knew at that point that I needed to create like an online brand. I need to try to capture my domain name, and you're the same way. You try to find Thomas Bain on all social media handles. I try to find Austin Staton or A Staton, and then I set up Google alerts for my name. So anytime it's mentioned, whether it's an interview I'm doing with energy journalist or something on the podcast, it's good to be able to see what people are saying, where your name ends up, or it could be also for identity theft. If something like that happens, you can be aware of it. So yeah, good times. Well, we've got a fun episode today. We are going to bring on John Havard, who is a content creator as a side hustle. And Thomas, you found him. You were the one that flagged him to me after maybe it was a Houston Chronicle story. Was that it? I mean,
Houston Chronicle, Texas Monthly, something. I just remember pulling into my kiddos' daycare and seeing a truck, Cowboy Jack, on the back of it. I'm like, oh, that's smart for side hustles, tax write-offs all the way through. But then started doing some research and actually got to know the guy and found out we do have some mutual connections and things like that. But, side hustles, we use this Business Communicator as a side hustle to hopefully educate everybody else and to keep ourselves informed on people who are doing really interesting things.
Let's go ahead and bring him on now. We've got John Havard, aka Cowboy Jack, joining us on the Business Communicators. And John, you started your YouTube channel during the pandemic, and it's grown to about, I think when I checked this morning, it was like 43,000 followers. But I mean, some of the videos that you're posting are getting millions of views. And
yeah, it's
great.
It's interesting, like, because everybody always talks about subscribers, but my content is specifically for kids.
Yeah.
So it works a little bit differently. Like, of course, I would love to have like 5 or 10 million subscribers, but the kids platform doesn't work the same way, and the subscribe button is almost non-existent on YouTube Kids. Yeah. So we still manage to get good subscriber count, but we get like 8.5 million views a month on YouTube.
That's insane. And I was telling Thomas before you joined us in the green room that it's a little bit noisy around the house today. So I don't have kids, but my niece and nephew, who are just turned 6 and one turns 4, and I think October, are over today. So it's a little bit louder. They were playing around on like the walkie-talkies this morning, and I guess they got like a construction site and started like making demands, yelling them, asking them questions. They were just having a good old time. And so I was watching your YouTube channel, and it's kind of fun to see what you do. You go around, interview with like first responders, local businesses, partner with local brands, and try to explain sometimes complex industries or complex things to kids in a very easy to understand and digestible way. And you kind of make it fun. I mean, what was your inspiration for kind of going this route and deciding to create a channel?
So it was really, I won't call it dumb luck, but it was, there was hard work involved, but there was a lot of dumb luck. Like you mentioned it, we did start it during the pandemic. And basically what happened was I was traveling a good amount of time, for my actual day job. And then I was in Cincinnati. I got a phone call saying, hey, the Houston Rodeo's canceled. This thing has some legs on it. You need to get home. And from that point on, I got home, and my 2.5-year-old son at the time, he's 5 now, but he was 2.5. his school was closed down, and then my wings were effectively clipped. My wife was at home, and so we were always those parents like, we're not going to let our kids watch a bunch of TV. That's garbage.
Yeah.
And then look at us now. But
yeah, things change when you actually have kids.
Yeah. And what it was is like we had to use the television as a tool to entertain him so we could get on Teams meetings. Back then it was Skype meetings all the time. And so we really did not like a lot of the content that was out there for kids. There's a lot of toy unboxing, a lot of maybe undesirable behaviors. Like one of his favorite videos was this guy going to a junkyard and spray painting cars, and I'm like, if that dude thinks it's cool to spray paint cars, like, no, we're not watching this. And
Right.
I just kept talking about it with my wife. It was really bothering me that we didn't have like a modern role model, somebody like Fred Rogers or Captain Kangaroo that I grew up on in the 80s and 90s that I loved it. And it was, parents thought it was safe. Just put your kids on it and walk away. They'll occupy themselves. And so I kept talking about it. My wife, Andrea, one day was like, look, if you care so much, just make your own show. And so I literally had bought us a GoPro camera to record Christmas that year. And she was like, look, I've got the camera. We'll go down to the pond. You make a video for Caden about fishing. He'll love it. And I was like, fine, we'll do it. And so I dressed up like a cowboy because his favorite movie at the time was Toy Story. And he loved Woody, the character. And so I got my cowboy get up on and went down to the pond, recorded an episode. And he absolutely loved it. And I thought he loves it because it's dad. There's nothing unique about this. He thinks it's cool because it's me. But then my wife took it a step further and showed it to her friends' kids, and everybody's loving it. And she's like, we could do this. This is so much fun. And I was like, I work in industrial sales. They're going to laugh me out of the building. I don't want to put this online. But it became it was a therapeutic hobby for the two of us to get away from the kids. We'd get a babysitter and we would escape to go film something, and just kept doing it. And finally I caved and let her put it online, and the rest is history from there. It's just kind of blown up on us.
That's incredible. And Thomas, you've got kids in, this demographic, this age range. I mean, you discovered it first.
They do, and yet my kids are outdoorsy, but their YouTube is more like the baking, and I'm like, oh, tiny baking, which uses 4 times the amount of ingredients for a cake that's about the size of a quarter. And I'm like, you could have baked 3 regular cakes for what you use for this little cake.
I would love to tell you that those aren't fascinating to me, but I watch all of them.
So when you posted on YouTube, how fast did you put any dollars behind it, or how fast did you follow the normal curve where very limited viewers and then all of a sudden something hits and you just watch your viewer count go?
It all happened pretty quickly. So up until we had about 10 videos out, it was maybe, 500 views here, 1,000 views there, which at that point was blowing us away. We're like, oh my God, this is 1,000 views. This is crazy. And then I think it was around the 10th episode we put out, and I don't know what the magic sauce was, but all of a sudden it just absolutely skyrocketed. And we started getting subscribers. We were getting, 1,000 subscribers a day all of a sudden. It was just insane. And once that machine starts churning, there's no stop. I mean, you can stop it if you want to, obviously, but I didn't want to stop it. It was a fun ride. I remember when we hit our first 1 million views, I was like, this is crazy. And now we're sitting at, I think we're coming up on 80 million views. And to me, that's just unfathomable. I mean, every time we go up at another 10 million views, I'm like, that little 10 million view block that we just hit is somebody's absolute dream. And here I am doing it for the 8th time, the 9th time, the 10th time. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's just incredible with the power of YouTube and content creation, because it makes it more accessible to everyone. Like literally anyone can go out there and create content. We've seen people blow up overnight on TikTok. And I think the pandemic had a lot to do with that as well. People being indoors and relying on screens, relying on streaming. But it's really interesting to me just to see YouTube in general, because we mentioned the quote about us in PR News about free resources, free education. Thomas and I have talked about this numerous times on the podcast about like YouTube University, and like if you want to learn something, why pay $20,000 a year to go to a college when you can learn, trades, you can learn interview techniques, you can learn so much stuff for free on YouTube. What value have you seen from platforms like that, and how have you maybe adjusted your approach since that first video that went out to your most recent video that you published?
Well, like when we first got started, we were just literally making a show for our son, and we did what we thought was cool. And then once we started getting traction, we started watching YouTube videos on how to be better at this. And now our concept is much more different than it was when we first started. We used to kind of just jump into an episode. Well, now we kind of frame it up in the beginning, give it like a highlights reel with a theme song. It's not too long. But all those things, and we frame it in a different way. We've learned a lot. We have a huge following in the special needs community. That's really what's kept us going, particularly the autism families that really appreciate what we do, because I'm very purposeful with the way we make our show. I make sure that I speak very clearly to kids in my adult talking voice. I'm not a fan of the shows that use a silly, goofy voice to try and get kids' attention or anything. I feel like we should be talking to them just like Fred Rogers or Captain Kangaroo did. That was my inspiration. And so those special needs communities have reached out to us and given us more direction as far as how we could be a better resource for them. Things that we do. Like our number one video ever is Cowboy Jack visits the dentist. And as a kid's show, going to the dentist doesn't seem like something that's really interesting. But what it does is I'm their buddy Cowboy Jack, the guy that they know and love. And in a very calm, collected manner, I'm teaching them that we're going to the dentist. It's not scary. We're having a good time with it. And it serves a purpose to make sure, our chompers don't fall out. So we've changed a ton of things about the show since we get started. And of course, we do fun things. Like we'll put out a Play Place episode probably once a quarter or something like that. Or, the episode we have coming out this week is playing putt-putt. And that's pure fun. There's not a ton of I try to hide educational content to it, but it's mainly just fun. But we do those purpose-driven episodes as well. And like you were talking about with YouTube U type thing, I mean, we learned to edit our videos. We learned all the content strategy from watching YouTube videos. And then the other really cool thing that we do, and this doesn't relate to that idea at all, but one of the really cool things that we try to focus on our show, we don't get to do it enough. We're making a concerted effort to do this more, is to show kids skilled trades. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think kids have enough exposure to that. And I think it'd be really fascinating for kids to get to see, hey, maybe college isn't meant for me, but I saw welding and that fascinated me. And I want to, Cowboy Jack said that can be a fantastic career path, and now I'm exploring that as an opportunity. Being a carpenter, a plumber, a electrician, all these different amazing skilled trades that people go out there and do every day. And I look at them and I'm like, thank God you know how to do this, because I work on a computer and talk to people for a living. So
yeah. I think it's really interesting to look at YouTube, because I see how certain pages have just blown up. Like one of the ones that I've followed for a while is What's Inside. It's a Utah family. I'm sure you're familiar with it. The host of the channel, he's brought in his family. They kind of, I don't know, have like sort of like a STEM focused concept for a lot of things, and they've kind of evolved over time. But who are some creators that you look to for inspiration, when it comes to developing content, maybe strategy, learning tricks on the algorithm? I mean, who are some creators that you look to?
Oh, I mean, I look at everybody. I mean, there's really great kids content out there. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I don't like, but there are some really fantastic people out there. And I've, because of our success, like I've gotten to actually befriend some of these people. Like there's a really great channel out there, Handyman Hal, and it's two guys out of now I say this, I can't think of it, Myrtle Beach. And they were heavily involved in youth ministry, and they started their channel during the pandemic, just trying to give kids some exciting experiences when they couldn't get out and do them on their own. And we bounce ideas off of each other all the time. The great thing about the creator community, in my day job, we're very competitive, right? And you're always trying to get a leg up on the competition, and it's all, I mean, it's the sport of competition, and I thoroughly enjoy that. But at the same time, in the creator world, it's not so much a competition,
Right.
because there are literally so many people, so many consumers out there, and you can't be everything to everybody, because people are either going to gravitate to your personality or not. But bouncing ideas and concepts off of each other, we've made friends with so many different cool creators throughout this thing, and it's just a really unique and refreshing experience.
You talk about your professional life and your side hustle. What are some of the things that you've learned on your side hustle that have translated over to your professional life, or tips and tricks that some of our listeners could use? Because our listeners run the gambit of marketing, PR, sales, advertising.
Yeah, I mean, specifically because of Cowboy Jack and being a kids content channel, I've connected with so many people, and it's connecting just on a personal level. We don't really talk about work. We talk about our kids. We talk about funny nuances in the world and things like that. It's reminded me how important that human element is to what I do in my professional life. And it was a perfect timing too, perfect storm, because coming out of COVID, we had all kind of gone pretty cold. We're used to working in front of a computer screen and not shaking hands in person. And now that changes, you have to retrain the brain that we're not just jumping on a call, we're seeing each other in person. Or if we are jumping in a call, be sure to bring that human element into it. There's a lot more to us than, what the task at hand. Of course, we want to get together to talk about a specific project, but say, hey, how's the family real quick? Or, find something relatable. It makes doing business together so much more enjoyable. And there's no influence to it, right? You're not, because you're being a nice person and asking about someone's family, or asking them how their weekend was and actually caring what their response is and engaging with them on that response. You're not changing the tides of the outcome of your bid that you submitted. But say you are successful, that project is going to go so much smoother, because you have that human element. Hey, I know about you, you know about me. We're not just robots here. We're actual real people. We're relatable. We're going to get mad at each other because we're working on a project, but we'll come back together. It'll all come back around. It's just the human element of things. I think Cowboy Jack has made me a much softer person in a good way.
When I look at a lot of content creators now, they're on all platforms, right? The ecosystem has just evolved so much. It's not just YouTube, it's not just TikTok. There's so many different platforms that people try to be on, and of course, there's different audiences for each one. There's different demographics for each one. How have you kind of looked at the different social media platforms to maybe expand your audience or to try new things?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a significant amount of we've never paid for advertisement for Cowboy Jack. We just have always appreciated the traction that we've received. But we've posted in a lot of different groups throughout time, and trying to get the word about Cowboy Jack out on Facebook in particular, because I'm old school. I'm not cool like the new Instagram crowd. But Facebook, and now it's evolved to where, I don't have time for that stuff, but my wife is our editor. She's our social media manager. She does all these things. And so she still posts regularly in different groups and everything. But you'll find that you can, YouTube is very one-sided. There's not really room for discussion. I know there are comments, but it's not really a true discussion. So using Facebook to leverage having actual real conversations with people to bring them into the YouTube fold and attract them to other platforms as well. I mean, I think you tie them all together. It's a very tricky thing to get someone to follow you. Say someone follows you on YouTube and you tell them, hey, go make sure you're following us on Facebook. You're going to find that crossover, getting somebody to leave one platform to go to another one, is going to be difficult for multiple reasons. Not only does that platform not want the user changing platforms, but also just getting somebody to close one app and open another one or whatever. It's a unique world.
It's a pain. And Thomas and I talked about this when Threads first launched, because Threads, they try to migrate all of your Instagram followers into your Threads followers. And I was like,
No.
I have Twitter and Instagram are completely different for me, right? Like the people that I follow on Twitter are mostly news oriented, sports oriented. Like I go there for information. Instagram for me was, I don't know, close friends, family, maybe like content creators that focus on travel, those interests. But like, I don't want to follow those people on Twitter. And so when I logged into Threads and I was like, I don't want to follow this person. And for me, it's been useless. So I think that is a great point as well, that there are different ecosystems. Understand where your audience is and where you can, I don't know, leverage it the best.
And it's interesting you say that the challenge of getting persons to go from one platform to another platform, because that's like step one of the rule book of conflict resolution, or hug your haters. Jay Bear, free plug for you there. Acknowledge in public, get them off that platform as fast as possible to talk in a private setting. With 80 million views, have you done any sort of collaborations, partnerships, monetized your website? Because so many creators I've started listening to and following have been like, man, I wish I would have turned on that revenue stream the second I hit 1 million listens.
Revenue is an interesting tale for us. I don't know how detailed you want me to get here, but
as much as you want. I mean,
we're
more focused on the business communication side. So, and we haven't spoken with a lot of YouTube content creators. So I think, people, they hear like the Mr. Beast and what kind of revenue he's doing, but for the average person that's doing a side hustle, they just don't know. So I mean, we're as much as detail as you want to share, we're all about.
Well, I would just advise all your listeners that if you want to get big on YouTube to make a living, do not make kids content. There's a lot of very specific rules about monetization for kids content that are very creatively written, that give a lot of gray area and a lot of means for that monetization to be taken away. And that's what's happened to us. I choose not to talk about it publicly anymore because it divides people. But there's something silly in my intro that I say that I never intended to be divisive at all, but apparently there are people in the world that feel like it is. And so I was demonetized on YouTube. But Facebook has been very good to us. We've been picked up by other networks as well. But like I said, I mean, kids content creation versus adults content creation are completely different worlds. And YouTube got slapped with a lawsuit, a very significant lawsuit about COPA, which is Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act. And that changed the landscape of YouTube kids content creators being paid. Basically. Now the huge channels, the guys pulling 5 million, 10 million views a day, of course they're, still making money. But the way kids content is monetized, it's completely different. And so like what we've done is through these other networks, we've been able to keep ourselves in the black and not in the red anymore because of networks like Yippee TV, which is a Christian-based streaming platform for kids that picked this up. And that has been fantastic for us. We're also now on Tubi. We've pitched to, or not I'm not that bright, but I have people who are helping me with this that have pitched us to Peacock TV, HBO Max, all these different platforms. And we're just trying to continue to grow that platform mix because, I mean, it'd be great for one day for this thing to pay some bills.
Too bad you didn't start about 3 or 4 years before COVID. Then it's like, hey, Netflix, I got this idea. You don't even have to have a concept. Here's a blank check, go.
we pitched to Netflix. It was a hard no from those guys, unfortunately.
Well, I think they've had to readjust their model. Before COVID, I think you heard those stories of, I just got a check for $5 million to create a show on Netflix. And you're like,
yeah.
You? Wait, what?
So one of the things that we've done to try and also, keep this thing afloat and do that is that we started the Dad Show, which is Dad's Gone Mild. And that thing absolutely blew up like crazy on Facebook. It's not there on YouTube yet. The content isn't right for YouTube yet. I'm still playing with concepts and things, but we started with just, making funny videos for adults on Facebook and YouTube, and it just hasn't gotten there yet. But on Facebook alone, it jumped from 0 followers to 100 followers to 30,000 within like a month. It was insane how fast that thing grew.
What's the what's kind of the purpose for that? What do you hope to see from that channel at some point?
All the things I can't say as Cowboy Jack. I mean, but still, it's all kids safe content, right? Like I that's who I am in my personal life. I try to keep the swear words at a minimum. Of course, there's times where things fly, but kids, it's basically family safe comedy, but it's mainly about parenting, about being a dad. We make, funny videos about 2 dads get together to try to go out for a night on the town, and they realize they're both just really tired. So they end up at Chili's for, a triple dipper and 1 beer and go home and feel like heck the next day,
The dad who knocks on the neighbor's house that they've never seen and talk about their front yard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, comparing lawnmowers, all those good things. I mean, I did a silly one last night I filmed, was about just different dad types on airplanes. You've got the texting dad, the sleeping dad, the something on the wing dad, and then of course you have the lean back and annoy everybody dad. So
I mean, that kind of content does well on social. I mean, you think to one of the biggest creators out there right now, also from Texas, Dude Perfect. I mean, Dude Perfect, they're based in Dallas. They're family friendly. It's entertaining. They reach kids, millennials as well.
Yeah. Those guys are incredible.
They're massive. I mean, they just to see what they've done with their brand and to really focus in on what's making it work. It's insanity. I mean, they're partnering with major brands, major athletes. They just bought in, I guess, a stake for a Premier League team. I mean, it's insanity.
They sell out Toyota Center multiple times a year. The Houston Rockets don't do that. Yeah, I mean,
and they travel, and it's almost become like a NASCAR. Not quite 100,000 per weekend, but there's still thousands of people that are paying to see them on stage for an hour and a half or 2 hours.
But there's a commonality between I think Dude Perfect and you, is that you both started somewhere, and you started with a GoPro. Dude Perfect started in a backyard with a basketball and a hoop, standing on somebody's roof, shooting on a cell phone. I mean, I think it just goes to show that if you have an idea, doesn't matter, if you have an expensive red camera or, insane microphones or lighting or special effects, you can start literally from anywhere and grow. So I guess my question to you before we kind of wrap things up is, if there's somebody out there that has an idea and they want to, launch a YouTube channel or a TikTok page or really just anything, what advice would you give them for just getting started and going for it?
Start doing it now. Don't wait. Like, that's the biggest thing. I mean, we all have this fear of being embarrassed, right? Or this intuition that people aren't going to like this. So, but what's the thing? I mean, this is different from our professional career. Our professional careers, we take very calculated risks and do things in a correct way. This is your world. If you have an idea, you want to make fishing videos, you could be the next Jimmy Houston tomorrow, but you won't unless you start making the videos. And your first content is going to be terrible. I promise. There's no way around it. The first time you turn on the camera, you're going to stutter. You're going to mess up. It's going to be absolutely awful. But you won't get to that good stuff until you make the bad stuff. And I think you identify something that you're passionate about. That's where it has to be. Like, my passion is making kids happy. And I think you as long as you focus and stay true to your passion, people will recognize that. And it won't matter that you don't have crystal clear 4K video or, stereo sound that blows the doors off of Disney. All those things are great, but you'll get there in time.
Yeah.
Let the content be beginner content while you're a beginner. Don't be embarrassed of it. Be really proud, because you're taking a risk. You're putting yourself out on the interwebs for anyone to see. And there's really mean people out there. People are going to make fun of you. People are going to look down on you and say, why is this goofball doing this. He's the worst I've ever seen. But for every one person that's negative to you like that, there's going to be 5 that love it.
Yeah.
And they stick with you, and it just keeps snowballing, man. Just don't be afraid. Put yourself out there. It's easier than dating, I promise.
Well, I think
been a long time since I played that world.
Yeah, I think authenticity is key as well. And Thomas and I have chatted about this before. I mean, we're never going to have the numbers that Joe Rogan does. We're not going to have 10 to 15 million people listening to us in a day. But I tell myself and Thomas that, like, as long as one person is positively impacted by an episode that we do, it's a win. I mean, we're not making money off of this, but it's a passion project for us. And that's why this week, seeing someone that I had never heard of mention us in like an article that they were being interviewed about on PR News, like, it was like awesome. Like, one person finds value in us. Like, that's awesome.
Remember that did not happen by accident. They didn't stumble across you.
Yeah.
You're making an impact, and it's not always that evident to us, but it's that you're exactly right. That one person that it affects positively. You could find somebody who's just been laid off from their job and they're having a really hard time, and you hit on this one key sticking point that they never recognized before, and it changes the trajectory of their whole career.
It's something that Thomas always says: be kind. That's his takeaway almost every episode that we do.
Even though in today's hyper politicized social media world where people are mean, it almost seems like people are trying to go that way. I'm like, stop it. We have too much of that going on as we speak.
Mean people suck. Be a nice person.
They do. I think we had one of our guests on there she was talking about her agency, and she said, I have a very strict no asshole policy when I'm interviewing people.
And yes, we can have.
Our target audience isn't kids, so we do have some language. I think we actually do.
People suck, man.
we do a happy hour once a quarter on this thing where we actually have adult beverages while we talk, because happy hour is networking. From that, and like Austin said, is if one listener can get one tip to make them a better business communicator, because I know Austin and I have different expertise. While there's things that I do that he could do, and he does things that I could do, but not very well. It's the whole picture that comes in, and some of our other co-hosts do things that neither one of us can do very well.
Yeah. Well, John, it's been great having you on the Business Communicators podcast. And, for those that want to follow your work and, maybe they have kids and they want to, follow Cowboy Jack on social media, like what is the best way for them to?
Yeah, just your favorite streaming platform, just search Cowboy Jack and I'm the fella in the big old hat. And the same goes for Facebook, And of course, you can follow Dad's Gone Mild if you don't have kids and you just want some silly, good laughs for adults. It's just Dad's Gone Mild. So.
I like it. We'll definitely drop the links in our show notes below. So if you're listening to this episode right now, just scroll down and click on the links and give John or Cowboy Jack a follow where you can. But John, we appreciate you for joining us on the Business Communicators podcast.
Thank y'all for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, Thomas, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
I do, and I always enjoy when we get those off the wall guests, and just how does this have anything to do with business communications? And our goal of here's one little tip: start now if you're thinking about doing something.
Well, and plus, content creation, understanding the platforms is incredibly important. Whether you're a Fortune 500 comm specialist or whether you're running an agency, I mean, you got to know what works, where people are, what content works well, how to storytell, because at the end of the day, that's what we all do as communications professionals. We tell stories and we interpret stories. And whether you're doing that as public relations or a data analyst or Cowboy Jack.
Professional or Cowboy Jack, yeah.
Exactly. You are telling a story or you're interpreting a story.
And I think one of the challenges, as he alluded, is so many times in our professional world, we're hyper calculated in what we're doing. And I think that so much we almost go to the point that we overproduce certain things to start with. When you and I have said, fail early, fail fast, don't make a big investment, but try to make it authentic. Try to actually give it the voice versus the ad agency and the creative agency that you have on staff when you get them together and spend a whole lot of money on B-roll and everything else in between. Certain aspects of it don't need that level of investment.
Yeah, and sometimes your audience matters too. I've told this story a few times, but when I was at BP, we were up in Toledo, Ohio, and the refinery manager there, he wanted to do a series of, I guess, employee updates on video because video plays well. People can watch on their phone, and we had found like a local firm in that area that could do some really nice videos and turn them around quickly for like, I don't know, $1,500, $2,000. And for content creation and video, that's pretty affordable.
That's a steal.
And the videos, they looked great. And he loved them, but he said, you know what? They look too polished. And he said, even though it's only $1,500 to $2,000, people will see this and think that we're spending a lot more than we actually are. And he asked me, he was like, what can we do differently? And I told him, I can give you an iPhone, give you a microphone, teleprompter that you can use, and all in it was like $200 worth of additional material that they had to create. But they just decided to film it on the iPhone just so it didn't have the look of being something that was inauthentic or overly polished, and it worked.
You mentioned that, and I remember being a judge for PRSA and IABC, and judging, being a secondary judge, and seeing people who say, wow, they spent so much money, I can't believe that they did this, and they get to the budget section and it's like $500. And I'm like, you don't need massive budgets. And then
no, you need to be creative.
And then conversely, I've seen people be punished for spending $100,000 and getting something that should have been shot on an iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Thomas, this was a fun episode of the Business Communicators. And again, thanks to John Havard for joining us on this podcast. If you want to follow Cowboy Jack, we'll link to all of that in the show notes below. Also, if you want to follow our work, just search at Biz Communicator on all the social media platforms. You'll find us there. Also visit thebusinesscommunicators.com. But Thomas, college football is here. We have it back this week. I'm excited about it. Good luck to your Red Raiders. Good luck to my Baylor Bears. Big 12 strong. And on behalf of our guest this week, Cowboy Jack or John Havard, my name's Austin Stetton, alongside Thomas Bain. See you soon. Take care, everyone.
You've been listening to the Business Communicators. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review.